A lot of people's initial reaction is to panic and think that this has never happened before. For a lot of our listeners, this may be the first government shutdown rumors that they've ever heard.
Welcome to the Military Money Manual podcast, where every episode is all about achieving financial independence in the military faster than before. We believe personal finance shouldn't be boring or intimidating. Building wealth can be simple, and financial freedom is the ultimate financial goal. Now, here's your hosts, Spencer and Jamie.
Welcome back to the Military Money Manual podcast. I'm Jamie, and I'm here with Spencer from militarymoneymanual.com. Today, we're going to talk about 3 actionable steps you can take to survive a full or partial government shutdown. It's in the news. Everyone's nervous about it. Spencer, what are your overall thoughts about government shutdowns? Is this something we should all be worried about?
Well, like most things in the news media, Jamie, I think if you were on Mars under a rock and you just ignored the media for the next week, month, even if this shutdown ends up lasting a couple months, I think you'll be better off just completely ignoring it, going about your business. And there's 3 things I want to address today, and that's don't panic, number 1. Number 2, if the government does actually shut down, you will be back paid. And in fact, you might not even miss any paychecks. And then number 3, focus on what you can control. The government shutdown is one of those things that is so far above your pay grade, you don't really need to worry about it because it's almost like an act of God. There's nothing that little airman, little soldier, little Marine you can do about it. So just go with the flow and focus on the things that you can actually control and try not to stress about the big things that are completely out of your control.
Okay, that's a really good overview. I think that a lot of people's initial reaction is to panic and think that this has never happened before. For a lot of our listeners, this may be the first government shutdown rumors that they've ever heard during their career. Is this the first time our politicians have gotten us in this situation where the government might shut down? Is this new?
No, it's not new at all. In fact, in my 12-year Air Force career, we had 3 actual government shutdowns and then one, or actually a couple that were threatened.
Close calls.
Didn't end up panning out. So 2011, I remember I was in pilot training and there was rumors of the government shutdown. And this has happened before in the 90s, and it happened several times during the Obama and Trump administration. So it's both parties. It's Republican, Democrat. This isn't really a political or partisan thing. It seems like both parties really play the government shutdown card to kind of force issues that they want to get through. And they use the threat of
the fear factor.
The fear factor, right? And it's just heightened drama. It's like a reality TV show. It's really annoying to watch it play out. As a military service member, it can be really frustrating, right? Because the average citizen, a government shutdown usually doesn't have a big impact on them, right? Air traffic control still runs. Military service members still show up. Federal prisons are still in operation. Most health services are deemed mission essential, right? So they continue. So for the Social Security checks still go out, and we'll get into all the nitty gritty details of it here. But this has happened before. This will happen again until Congress gets their act together and either passes a law that says like we can't shut down, or comes up with a budget that everybody can agree to and then it gets passed. But I'll get off my soapbox about that for a moment. But the government nearly shut down in 2011. And I remember I was in pilot training and I had a conversation with my instructor. And I was like, what's going to happen? Like, I'm kind of tight on cash. And he was a really calm, chill guy. And he was like, man, one day you're going to be a captain and you're going to have a nice fat emergency fund and it's going to be okay. And he's like, right now, just cut your expenses back and try to ride it out if it does happen. And in 2011, it didn't actually happen, but the federal government shut down 16 days in 2013, 3 days in 2018. And I was actually TDY for that one. And they almost recalled me back to my home unit, which was Oconee. So that was going to be a real pain in the butt. But I didn't end up having to do that because it happened kind of over the weekend. And then they got funding after the fact. And then 35 days, the government shut down 2018 to 2019. So since 2013, the government has shut down 3 times. If it happens again in 2023, please don't panic. Just continue what you're doing, your good financial habits, and it's going to be okay.
You mentioned earlier, I still have to go to work though. There's no way to get out of that for this whole shutdown situation.
Yeah, usually military personnel, active duty, are deemed mission essential, and you just continue to report to work as your commander directs. There's usually no break. Federal Sometimes contractors, the contract expire. Federal civilian employees are sometimes sent home and furloughed. National Guard, sometimes the orders are curtailed or aren't issued. And so the national...
Depending on if it's state or federal money.
That's right. Yeah. So, follow the orders of your chain of command. But if you're active duty, expect basically nothing to change. Normal. It's mostly political theater, like I said, and you're still going to be required to report to work. Maybe if you're TDY, it might get cut short. Again, just, have an open conversation. This is something that if you have a good chain of command, they should be out ahead of, and they should start preparing you for. And it can feel like a little bit of fear mongering and a little bit of anxiety. But like so many things in the military, you don't know what you don't know. And your commanders probably don't have any more information than you do, honestly, when it comes to most of this stuff.
Okay, so if the shutdown actually does happen over the weekend or early next week or any time in the future, military members have some protections built in, and there's some draft legislation, and sometimes even the banks will take care of us. Can you explain a little bit about that?
It kind of goes back to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the book by Douglas Adams, but on the back cover of it was, in big bold letters is the saying, "Don't panic." And usually Congress wants to avoid the political impact of not paying the military, because if the military isn't being paid, that's something the opposition party, whether it's Republicans or Democrats or a third party that emerges in the future, that's something that party can point to and say, look, they shut down the government and they're not paying our military and they're hurting our military service members. And nobody, right wing, left wing, wants to be painted with that.
Yep.
So in previous government shutdowns since 2013, Congress has always passed last minute legislation to continue paying military service members. I'll caveat that though, except in 2018, 2019, the Coast Guard, which falls usually under the Department of Homeland Security, except in wartime, which it falls under Department of Defense, the Coast Guard was not exempted. And so they did miss a couple paychecks, and that was pretty tough on them. And the other thing was, usually, like you said, military-friendly banks kind of step in and offer interest-free loans. And I don't know why, but I think USAA didn't at the time, and Navy Federal did. I'll have to fact-check that one. But yeah, that was a tough situation for the Coast Guard. So probably your pay will continue regardless, even with a government shutdown. And if it does actually shut down, your pay is not protected. Both USAA and Navy Federal Credit Union, NFCU, are offering up to $6,000 in 0% interest loans, and it's based on your previous direct deposit payment. So if your last direct deposit payment into your Navy Federal account was, say, $3,700, Navy Federal is going to round down to the nearest 500, and they're going to loan you $3,500. So if your last direct deposit payment was $5,700. Again, they're going to round down to $5,500. And there's a 2-page PDF that you can Google, Navy Federal's Government Shutdown Loan Program Terms and Conditions, and you can check out how Navy Federal has set it up there. And then USAA has a very similar program as well. You can Google Government Shutdown Assistance, USAA, and that program should pop right up. But basically, both military-friendly banks are going to help you bridge the gap until we start getting paid again if military pay is affected during a government shutdown, which historically it hasn't been.
Okay, what about for the veterans and retirees? Is there any protections? Obviously, the money's coming from the federal government. What happens with them if the government were to shut down?
Yeah, again, so this just gets back to like how this whole federal government shutdown thing is pure political theater, and nobody actually wants anything really bad to happen, despite what the news media says. VA disability payments, Social Security payments, military pensions, all of these are different pots of money and completely unaffected by a federal government shutdown. So you do not have to worry about any of those payments. If receiving VA disability payments, military pensions, Social Security payments, they will not be affected by a federal government shutdown, and you will continue to receive those payments as you normally do. Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and then we'll be right back to the show.
Hey, Spencer, I got a cousin that just graduated from high school, and they're about to start basic training in a few months. Any ideas on a gift I should get him?
Yep, sure do, Jamie. The Military Money Manual, A Practical Guide to Financial Freedom, is a concise, easy to read, and practical guide to your military money. It's the book that I wish someone had handed me on my first day in the military. In the book, I explain the exact money tactics and investing strategies that can enable you to achieve financial independence while serving in the U.S. military. It's available on Amazon, Audible, and my website. It's hardcover, paperback, ebook, Kindle, and audiobook. You can get a special discount using promo code podcast on my website, shop.militarymoneymanual.com.
Okay, so we talked about number 1, don't panic. Number 2, if the government does actually shut down, you'll be paid back. Your third main point was focus on what you can control.
Yeah, and I think this just gets back. I mean, this is like big picture, stoic philosophy. But like I said before, this is a natural disaster. This is a hurricane that's coming towards you. And you, no matter what you do, you can't change the direction of this hurricane. So rather than panic or have anxiety about it, just kind of accept that, okay, the hurricane's coming and what can I do? I can get some sandbags. I can volunteer at my local blood bank. I can stock up some food and water or get my family to higher ground. Like there's actionable steps you can take during a government shutdown. And some of those things are probably steps you should have taken before. But like we always say, the best time to invest was yesterday. And the second best time to invest is today, right? So might as well, and you can't go back and change the past. So for a lot of people, this could be the wake-up call where they are like, man, I need to get out of this paycheck to paycheck cycle because it sucks. And when I have this natural disaster of a government shutdown heading towards me, I feel powerless. I feel like I can't do anything. And so this is the time to take that control back and to understand that, yes, you can do some things. And some of those things probably needed to be done a few months ago, but you can start doing them now. And so the next time a government shutdown's coming up, you can think, man, that sucks, but it's really not going to affect me because I'm financially resilient. So some of the things you can do are reduce your expenses. So now is not the time to purchase those airline tickets for that wedding in a year from now. Just wait until the dust settles a bit, right? Like don't go increasing your credit card bill and buying things that you absolutely don't need to. You can also get interest-free loans from the different aid societies that all the branches have. So the Air Force Aid Society, the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, Army Emergency Relief, and the Coast Guard Mutual Assistance all offer interest-free loans that you can pay back over an extended period of time, usually a year to 2 years. So you can use one of these aid society loans to help bridge the gap if you have car payments coming up, if you have mortgage payments coming up, if you have rent payments coming up. But another thing that you can do too is take a little bit of ownership and contact your lenders. Ask for a month of relief from payments, whether it's mortgage, rent, car payments, student loans, credit cards. It never hurts to ask for a pause in payments or reduce payments until your paycheck resumes. And a lot of these organizations, a lot of these companies are going to understand that your paycheck's delayed and you're in the military and it's completely out of your control. And so you might be able to go down to like a reduced payment schedule, or you may be able to defer your payments for a month until you get back paid. But again, this only comes into effect if your military pay is affected. And I think it is extremely unlikely in the event of a government shutdown that your pay would be affected. But these are just some tips, some tactics that you can use in case your pay is affected by the government shutdown. So it's a bit late, but you could also use this experience to start saving for an emergency fund. I mean, this is exactly the scenario an emergency fund is designed for. So when I was that young lieutenant in 2011, I don't think I had $1,000 in emergency fund yet. And so I was really nervous about the government shutdown coming up. Well, fast forward a couple of years, in 2018, well, I've been a captain for a while, I've got a $10,000 emergency fund. And so while a government shutdown and loss of pay would sting, I knew that I could cover our expenses for at least a couple months until our pay resumed, if that's what it came to.
Yeah, Spencer, absolutely. I think if money is stressful for you and you're worried about what to do with this, you're either behind on your bills or you're in the paycheck to paycheck cycle, this should be your motivation to break that, to think about how money can bring more peace into your life and not stress, not anxiety. This situation is out of your control, and the only thing you can really do is adjust your mindset about it.
Yeah, that's right, Jamie. I think this is a great time to dive into some Stoic philosophy. I'm always talking about it, but a couple places to start. Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, or Stillness is the Key, another Ryan Holiday classic. And then Tim Ferriss put out The Tao of Seneca on Audible, and he also released a couple of PDFs as well. But I really like the Audible version because the narrator has an excellent voice for it. But I think ultimately you need to turn off the news and don't monitor every update. I mean, there's nothing you can do about this. And the tension is they're just going to ratchet it up higher and higher. And the politicians are going to get more and more airtime. And the CNN headlines are going to be flashing at you. And none of it matters. None of it actually impacts you and affects you. And so focus on what you can control. Decrease your expenses, increase your income, save for a rainy day, hit the gym, spend time with your family, switch to a military-friendly bank, and recognize that this too will pass. You will get to the other side of this, and you can use this challenge, you can use this obstacle as motivation to come out on the other side better, or you can just kind of let it wash over you and end up as like a piece of debris on the other side and just completely adrift and still with no financial plan. So use this challenge as an opportunity to move yourself ahead financially, emotionally, spiritually, and all other aspects of life. Recognize that sometimes there are events that are outside of your control, and you can only control your reaction to those events. You can't control those events. So again, listener, those are 3 things that Jamie and I recommend you do in the event of a government shutdown. Number 1, don't panic. Number 2, if the government does actually get shut down, you will be back paid. There are assistance programs out there to help you bridge that gap until we receive our next paycheck. But usually military pay is protected in the event of a government shutdown. And number 3, focus on what you can control. We'll catch you in the next episode of the Military Money Manual podcast.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions presented here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or its components. Reference to any commercial products or services does not constitute DoD endorsement of those products or services.